Today my title is Living Your Blessing. This idea that not only are we blessed and bless, but we are a blessing. Who we are is a blessing to the world. And what the world gives back to us is a blessing. And it goes around and comes around, and we get to say yes to that. So I want to start out with a story about my own very young son at the time. He's in his mid-40s now. But he was my firstborn, so watching him learn to talk was new and different for me. I had never actually watched a kid go through the steps of learning how to talk. And I found it especially interesting, the capture and use of pronouns. I'm me, you're you. Isn't that interesting? And we thought he was doing just great with this until we tried to instill the concept of saying thank you. And he'd nod and smile and say, thank me. And we'd say, no, not thank you, thank you. He'd say, yeah, thank me. Okay. Totally confusing. And we gave up trying to straighten it out. Besides, it was adorable. And we also loved to watch how he thanked not just other people, but everything. He found everything a good reason to say thank me. Especially cute when he'd walk up to the automatic doors at the supermarket and say, thank me, as he walked through. Just adorable. Kids in automatic doors, which brings me, first, just notice that he was thanking everything. That's really cool. Second, notice the me in there isn't that far wrong, because if it's circular, thanking you is thanking myself, is thanking the world, is thanking me, is that energy of reciprocity, that energy of gratitude in circulation, blessing moving back and forth. So that said, now I will move to another little kid automatic door story. This one I was told by a teacher. She had been to Vegas and had noticed this family who had this adorable little girl in her party dress, lots of crinoline. And they came up toward the automatic doors of one of the big hotels, and the little girl ran ahead, waited for the door to open, curtsied and said, ta-da! And I love it, maybe a couple different reasons. Was she saying ta-da because I am so magical, these doors opened for me? Or was she saying ta-da because it was like the curtains opening on stage? Here I am, ta-da. Or both. I'll take either one. They're both this joy in being herself and being powerful, and here I am, ta-da. And that's my subject today, too. This living your blessing is showing up as who you are and being proud of it. Ta-da. Now, I did learn in the Midwest, there's a saying that is quite derogatory, that is, he thinks he's God's gift. And we know what people mean when they say that. I'm here to tell you that's only a bad thing when that's someone who thinks he's God's gift, thinks it's exclusive to him. When we say, I'm God's gift, knowing that you're God's gift, and you're God's gift, and you're God's gift, and we're all in this together, then it's a good thing, right? Let's know we're God's gift. Let's spread that energy of ta-da, of boy, I'm good, around us in the world, and and watch it inspire other people to notice it about themselves as well. Ernest Holmes, teacher, founder of our philosophy, author of The Science of Mind, tells us we should allow the gifts of life to flow out to everything we touch, everyone we meet, every situation we contact. Then whenever, wherever we go, every situation is blessed, every person is helped, every discord is harmonized without our even being conscious of it, just by showing up as who we are. It's a wonderful anecdote about Emma Curtis Hopkins. How many of you know Emma? Yeah. For those of you who don't, she's known as the teacher of teachers. Her students included our own Ernest Holmes, the Fillmores, who went on to found Unity, the Brooks sisters, who went on to start Divine Science. But Emma wasn't just her teaching, she was her being. Okay? And there's this lovely story, memoir, a friend, colleague of hers, watching Emma come down a gangplank from a ship that had docked in New York Harbor. And this woman talking about her describes Emma as walking down the gangplank, beaming and blessing. I like it. Beaming and blessing. That's just how she proceeded in the world. And that's what I'm talking about today. I want to feel that. I want to be that. I want to be beaming and blessing. And blessing is thanking and appreciating and noticing and honoring and participating. This last week I was catching up on old blog postings from Reverend Duchess Dale. She's my minister at Santa Fe Center for Spiritual Living. And in reading the old posts, I realized I had missed a special day that Reverend Duchess had dedicated as Appreciation Day. She had decided many years ago, August 25th is Appreciation Day. She first came up with it for the August edition of Agape's monthly magazine, Inner Visions. And she said, okay, we're going to make August 25th Appreciation Day. And that's going to be the day that we just take the extra time and effort to appreciate those people or animals or places in our lives that we may have just kind of stopped seeing, that we may be taking for granted. Well, I missed August 25th, but that doesn't mean I can't call it today, Appreciation Day. And I love the idea of go ahead and make one day special, not because it's the only day we do it, but to remind us that we should be doing that all the time, to get in a new habit. Ernest Holmes again. Real giving is the art of transmitting ourselves to others and to the conditions and situations that surround us. This kind of giving is not something for special occasions only, for it should become a habit growing out of our desire to live life to the fullest extent. Only that which becomes an inward habit of thought can spontaneously flow from the heart and transmit itself to everything we touch. Just as life belongs to the one who lives it, to the one who takes it, so the fuller life belongs only to the one who scatters every good he has. Ooh, I like that. Scatter it, share it. And the way associations work in my head, I went from scattering to Johnny Appleseed. Remember him? Okay. I actually looked him up this morning because I was pretty sure he was a real person that had turned into a myth. And yeah, I'm right. He was a real guy, and he was a myth. And one part of the myth that's not quite accurate, we have this picture of him just planting apple seeds at random all over the countryside. And actually, reading about him on Wikipedia this morning, he was a nurseryman. And he didn't just plant at random. He started nurseries, and he got people to manage them and care for them, and then share in the profits from selling the baby trees from those nurseries to the orchards, to the larger world that spread the apples that he's famous for spreading. So yes, he's planting seeds, he's scattering. And there's more organization to it. Who knew? So I learned something. But the thing with trees, especially, there's a resonance there. There's a myth there, because trees often don't even bear fruit in our own lifetime. If we're planting toward a future and walking away from it, we have a trust and a faith that something wonderful is happening that we don't even necessarily get to see the fruits of. And sometimes we do. Sometimes we get to stick around and see it bear fruit. A couple of weeks ago, I read a lovely story about a man planting trees. And then when I went looking for it to firm up the facts, because I tend to remember the feelings and not always remember the facts, but I couldn't find it. Found a lot of other good stuff. Couldn't find this. So these facts may already be off, but this was a fellow in Asia, I think Indonesia, I'm not sure. And he lived near an area that was desert, that was waste, that nothing was growing. And he thought that was sad. And he decided he could do something about it. So he got in the habit of putting a couple little tree seedlings into his backpack every morning and walking out to the edge of this barrenness and planting those trees. And he did this every day. And he's done that for decades at this point. And he's still going out there and planting a new seedling, but behind him, what he planted years ago has matured. It grew into a grove, it grew into a small forest, it attracted wildlife, there are wetlands, there's shade and green and bird song and beauty. And he's still going out there and planting a couple of more every day. Pretty wonderful. We can do that with our blessing. We can do that with our thought. We can do it with real trees. Or we can do it with an idea, with a prayer. So looking for that story, as I say, I found all these other wonderful tree stories, and the one that really hit home the biggest is this young man from Germany. His name is Felix Finkbeiner. And Felix is 19 now and living in England. He's going to college in England at this point. But Felix's big story starts when he was 9 years old and was in 4th grade in Germany. And there was a class assignment about climate change. Well, he got all excited because he loved polar bears, and he thought this was going to be about saving polar bears. And he very quickly discovered it wasn't just about polar bears, it was about people. It was about the whole planet. Oh, okay. And he was about noticing there were things that you could do that didn't seem to be getting done. So he decided he was going to organize folks so these things got done. And the big one was planting trees. He started an organization based from his 4th grade school project that's called Plants Planting for the Planet? Plant for the Planet. And his first big symbolic act was to plant this funny little crooked crabapple tree in front of his school. He didn't know that the newspaper photographers were going to show up. He didn't know it was going to go viral. He didn't know that the whole world was going to say, look at this kid planting his tree. He says, if I'd known that, I would have asked my mom to buy a more majestic tree. But Felix, starting at 9 with that, pretty soon he's talking to other schools, other organizations. By the time he turned 13, he had 55,000 ambassadors. He calls them climate justice ambassadors. And most of them are between about 8 and 13 years old. Okay? And their goal at that point was to plant 1 million trees. And it was growing so beautifully that at age 13, Felix was invited to speak before the UN General Assembly about Plant for the Planet. And one of the things that he told the UN, because he's that kind of a kid, was, you know, there's a study that if you give a monkey a choice between 1 banana right now and 6 bananas later, the monkey's going to take the 1 banana. He says, I kind of see the adults in my world as 1 banana people. We children have to learn to think about 6 bananas. Because you guys aren't doing it. We're going to have to do it. He says, I see the adult world has come up with analyzing the problems and coming up with the figuring out the solutions and then not acting on them. So we're going to act on them. This is Felix talking to the UN, right? The UN was so impressed with him that they handed a project that they had started to him for his crew to take up and continue. And that is the UN Billion Tree Project. So we've gone from 1 million to 1 billion. And he stepped into it. Another thing with Felix is he was really curious. Nobody seemed to know how many trees there really were in the world. A lot of people had guesstimates. Nobody'd really done any kind of scientific study. And he kept asking the question, so how many trees are there? Till some scientists said, well, maybe we ought to try and find out. And with satellite imagery and so on, they constructed a study that by 2015, they figured out that there were 3 trillion trees on the planet in 2015. And on the one hand, this was very exciting because it was about 7 times more than all of those guesstimates had said. But they also had decided that since the dawn of agriculture about 12,000 years ago, that count, that total, was down by almost half. And that we were losing trees at a rate of 10 billion a year. Well, 10 billion lost as opposed to gonna plant 1 billion doesn't sound so very good. And they were worried that Felix was going to be discouraged by this news. Well, not Felix. Instead, well, we've got to up our game. We've got to plant 1 trillion trees. Okay, Lynn's little head doesn't handle 1 billion. I don't, million maybe, billion, 1 trillion is 1,000 billion. And they're going to plant 1 trillion trees. And he's excited about it. He knows they can do it. And the reason I'm talking about Felix is because this is his blessing. He's in it. He's doing it. And it's not a should, and it's not a somebody told me I oughta. It's coming from the inside. I also want to point out that Felix isn't out there planting 1 billion trees. Felix is out there talking, speaking, convincing, organizing, because he knows that's his gift. So this isn't about, it's about everybody finding their own way to be their own blessing. It's not specifically about planting a tree, although maybe it is. Or about talking to the UN, or maybe it is. Maybe it's as simple as walking through automatic doors and saying, ta-da! If somebody else gets delight from that and takes it somewhere else, that is a blessing that has been shared. That's what we're doing here, folks. Ernest Holmes. It is quite a burden lifted when we realize that we do not have to move the world. It is going to move anyway. This realization does not lessen our duty or social obligation. It clarifies it. It enables us to do joyously and free from morbidity that which we should do in the social state. So yes, that calling from within, this is how I need to show up. And as I say, I really don't like the should word. My very first minister used to say that there was an 11th commandment, thou shalt not should on thyself. So when I get into a should, I think, okay, that's Lynn trying to push instead of letting Spirit pull. And when I lie awake at 3 a.m. trying to figure out how to push what I need to happen in my life right now, it's time for me to relax and go to that Diane Harmony mantra. I surrender the presence and power of God within me. Because it's not about Lynn figuring out how to push. And when I try and figure out how, but I don't know how, I need to get from here to there, but I don't know how, I go to, I don't know how, but Spirit does. And then I can relax from my trying to muscle it into that natural gift of Spirit in me, through me, as me, pouring out into my own consciousness, my own expression in the world, my own choices. That's what we're doing here, folks. That's our blessing. We are each the blessing that Spirit gives itself by being us. We are each the blessing that we share with the world, however we choose to act that out, to live it in the world. Talking Hurricane Irma, we can be on the phone with the folks we love. We can give money or canned goods. We can jump in our trucks and go down to help them rebuild. Or we can just hold them in our thoughts and prayers. And every one of those things is a blessing. And it's our choice which works best for us. If it works best for us, it works best for everybody, because that's how it works. So, how are you living your blessing? You are, whether you know it or not. And so it is. Oh, just centering into that space within us that absolutely knows the oneness and wholeness and enoughness that we call God. Knowing that joy, that pure energy of creativity and wisdom and wholeness that is always right there being itself. I know that's who we are. I know that's alive and well within us, whatever our outer situation may be looking like, whatever stories we may be telling ourselves. I know that inner creative urge that is pure love. seeks only to express through us into the world. And so I know and claim right now that we are open to that expression. We allow it. We delight in it. We share it. We scatter it. We spread it. We live it. And we take ownership of the blessing that we are. We honor ourselves. We are grateful we can be who we are. And I'm grateful for what this feels like on the inside right now. I'm grateful for that, how that shows up in every word I speak and connection I make and task I undertake today and tomorrow and the next day and the next. I am grateful for the blessing that circulates in the world because it is who we are. And in this gratitude, I let it go. I let it be. And together we say, and so it is. Thank you.